Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In this session, we will continue with chapter 7.2, in which we started last time, and we will go with arrays of classes, of objects of classes. So today we will do an exercise. We will assume we have the following class. We have a class employee, such that we have a private long employee ID, private double salary, we have a private string name. So we have three private members representing the data of an employee, which is ID, salary, and name. And then the method we have, as usual, we have a constructor at the beginning. The main aim of constructor, initializing employee ID to 0, salary to 500, name to no name. We have public void set employee, so this is a set method. It will accept three parameters: long new ID, double new salary, string new name. So if we need to change the values of the private members, we have to call this set method. The idea is that a new ID will be saved in employee ID, new salary will be saved in salary, a new name will be saved in name. Just like we have a set method, we have a three get method. We have get employee ID, that it will return the employee ID, and that's why we have long as a return data type. Get salary, it will return salary, which is of type double. Get name, we will have return name, which is of type string. So this class is given, including three private members, and we have to write another class. So here it says, write a Java program that will have the main method that declares an array of type employee of size 3 and ask the user to enter array values. So what we need to write another class such that we have to declare an array, let's call it list, such that we should have three employees, and the data we have to save, it should be of type employee. So it means each of these should have employee ID, salary, and name. So when it comes there, I should have here employee ID, we should have salary, we should have name, and similarly for location 1 and location 2. So if this is our array where we have three employees, once it is created, we have to ask the user to enter the values. So we will ask the user, please enter ID, salary, and name. So we need a long, we need double value, and we need a string. Once the data is entered, we have to save them first in location 0, and then in location 1, and finally at location 2. Once we finish with this, we will write another method that it will take the values and it will calculate the average. But as a starting point, let's do the following. Let's just create the array of the three elements and ask the user to enter the values. So we will do it as follows. So this is our class employee, where we have the employee, we have all the private members, constructor, set method, and the get method. And always we should have the closing bracket at the end. Now we will write another class. We will call it employee demo. We will have to start with Java utility scanner because I have to read from user. And we will have public static void main. Now, as usual, always we start with a scanner. So let's call it input. And then the next thing is we need to create the array. So the array, we need to create it of type employee. So I have to make sure that I have to copy the same name. So I'll just take this as it is, employee, and then I'll have it here. And I need two brackets because this is an array. I will call it list equals a new employee again. And between the brackets, I have to mention the size. According to the question, it should be of size 3. Just be careful, always you should have the same name as the class, even small letter and capital letter. So for example, if this is E with a small, it will not be compiled and it will give us a compiling error. So always we have to be sure with the spelling and even small and capital letters. So now the array is created. I have to ask the user for values, and because it's an array, so it is a must that we need a for loop. And always I will start from 0 because location, the first location in any array is 0. I should go up to the end of the array. So as usual, we use I is less than less dot length. And then we'll have to say I plus plus. And let's open a bracket and close it because we have a couple of steps. We have to do it within the for loop. Now when it is the first time, as we mentioned, we need to create the object itself. That's why I have to say go to list at location 0 equal a new employee, an empty bracket. So it means this will create a new employee. And then we can go and we create and we can ask for values and we can read the values. So let's have an output and input. So we will ask the user to enter 3 values for ID, salary, and name. As we discussed, always we need to declare variables, read the values into variables, and then we will call the set method in order to take the value and save them in the array. So I will need a variable ID, let's call it long ID. And from the input, from the keyboard, we will get this value. So we will say we need next long. Similarly, we need salary. So let's double check the data type of salary is double. So we will come there and we will say I need double. Let's call it salary equal input dot next double. Finally, we need name, and name is of type string. So now we are having the 3 variables. I have to take them and I have to save them into my array. So the way I need to take values and I have to set them in an object, always I have to use the set method. So the object we are dealing with is the name of the array at location 0 dot, and I have to use the set method. The set method we have, which is set employee. And set employee, it should take as parameter, it should take the long new ID and then the salary and then the name. So we have to know that it should take them in the following order: long, double, and string, representing new ID, new salary, and a new name. So in our program, we are calling them ID, and the second one we are calling it salary, and then the final one we are calling it as name. So now once we call the method, it will take the values, it will save them in location 0. But of course we notice that we use location 0 and location 0 there, but this is in a for loop. So the first time it should be for object at location 0, the second time for object at location 1, and so on. So that's why instead of saying a specific location like 0, I will say I. So I will be moving from the first object to the end. So let's compile just to make sure that we have no errors. So we have small here, which is a capital case. So now the compiling is done and we have no errors. Now we can do a run to find that is it going to ask for values. So here it says enter ID, salary and name. So let's say the ID is 1, salary is 400 and name is ABC. So this is the first employee. Again, it will ask me for another employee. So employee 2, 500 and XYZ. And the third employee 3, 600 AAA. So this is the end. So it works properly. We have 3 employees and they are saved in the array. Of course, if you need to double check is it saved in the array or not, you need to do an output. This is not required currently, but we will do it just like an exercise to make sure that the data we are saving in the array, it is saved properly. So let's go there. If you need to do output, of course, the first thing you will need is you will need a for loop. So I will need a for loop from I0 up to list.length I plus plus. So I will copy this. And then what I would need there, let's open and close a bracket. I need system.out. Here, the first time I have to go to the array at location I, which is location 0, and we have to print the ID, name, and salary. Let's assume we need only to print the ID. So the way to get the ID from the employee, I have to use the get method, and it is called get employee ID. So let's copy it so we make sure that we have no spelling or capital case or small case mistake. So let's have only the output of employee ID. So let's try this one. So let's say the first employee is 1, 300, it's called A. The second one, 2, 400, X. And then a 3, we have 600 and V. So here the output, we go to the output. We have 1, 2, 3, which are representing the employees that we have. So now we have all of these. And we know that our program is running properly. So let's go and we will remove the output because we don't need the output. So this was step number 1, which is from the main method, create the array, read the values, save them in your array. So this is what was done. We have the array created of size 3, and then from the main method, we ask the user for values. So if the user says enter ID, salary, and name. If the input was, for example, 1, 500, and then X, it means this one should be saved as employee ID, 500 as the salary, and X as the name. And as we mentioned, always we need to create variables. That's why we create a variable called ID, and we have to save one in ID. We create a variable called salary, such that 500 will be saved in salary, and we created a third variable called name, that X will be saved in name. Then the next step is I have to take these three variables and I have to save them in location 0 of the array. That's why I have to say go to the array at location 0 dot the set method, which is called set employee, and between brackets I have to send the parameters, which is ID, name, and salary. And then I have to go to location 1, and then we have to go to location 2. That's why we had a for loop, and we have a location I, which will be moving. But the idea is create variables, save the values you read from the user into these variables, and then save them in your array. Now the second thing we have to do is write a static method named below average that takes as parameter an array of type employee. The method should compute and output the average value of salaries, and then output employees' IDs and name with salary less than the average. And then I have to call below average from the main to check our answer. So we have a static method called below average. It will take an array of type employee. The job we have to do is we have to calculate the average of salaries. So this is step number 1. Step number 2 is we have to output employees' IDs and name if their salary is below the average. So the idea is, let's think about it in this way. Now we will have an array of 3 employees. And let's call this array as list. Each of these will have the private members in which we declared an employee class. So we will have employee ID, we will have salary, and finally we will have name. And similarly here I should have employee ID, salary, and name. Now because this is the method that called from the main, so all the data we will assume it's already there in the array that has been read from the main. So let's assume the data as follow. I have employee 1, salary is 500, and name is X. We have employee 2, salary let's say 600, and name is Y. We have employee 3, salary let's say 400, and the name is Z. So we have 3 employees, 500, 600, and 400, and then we have their names. My first step is I have to find the average of salaries. So because I have to go through all of the elements, so it's a must, I should have a for loop, and I will go from I equals 0. I should be less than the array length, so I will have to say list dot length, and then I plus plus. And then what I have to do, I have to calculate the sum of salaries. That's why I have to start by saying sum at the beginning is 0, and we know that sum should be double because we have to do the calculation of salaries. And here I have to say sum plus equal. Now the idea is that I have to retrieve, so we started here sum as 0. We have to get this 500 and we have to add it to the sum. And we need to keep adding these values. So I have to get this value and add it to the sum. This 500 is actually saved in location 0 of the array. So it means I have to go to the array at location 0, which we will refer to it as an I, dot get salary, because I cannot say dot salary directly because salary is a private member. So in order to retrieve this salary, I'll just have to say here get salary, an empty bracket, and then we will close the bracket. So the first time when the value of I is 0, it means go to location 0 and get the salary, which is 500, add it to the sum, so the summation will be as 500. When you go to the loop and you say I plus plus, the value of I will be 1. So go to location 1, get the salary, which is 600, and add it there. So this will be 1100. Once we go back to the loop, and it will be as location 2. So go to location 2, get the salary 400, go there and add it to the sum. So this will be as 500. And then when you go back, this is the end, and you finished all of the elements. So now what is remaining in your coding? You have to calculate the average. So you will need to create a variable average, and you will say it equals sum over 3, because I know that I have 3 employees. So I will say the sum, which is 1500 over 3, which will give us as 500, and then we can do the output of the 500. The next step, as I have to find employees below average. So let's do this step. Let's try to write it and compile it, and then we will find the other task, which is finding employees with salaries below average. So here, once you finish your main, you have to start the other method. So let's have it just below the main, or you can have it above the main. It is the same thing. So here I will start a new method. I will call it public static, and this is a method that will return nothing. So you will say void, and the name of the method, as mentioned in the question, below average. And we have to take an array of type employee. So the prototype we have to mention, I have to say employee, because this is the name of the class, the brackets, and then the name of the array, which is list. And then we have opening and closing a bracket. So if you will see, I can just take this a bit down. So if you can see, I have public static void main, opening a bracket and a closing a bracket. So this is just like one block. The main is only one block. And we have the other method, which will calculate the average as another block. So always make sure that you close the brackets properly, just to make sure that once you compile and run, your program will run correct. Now what I have to do here, as we discussed, I need a for loop, we need sum, we need average, and we need to calculate the average. So basically, we will just write down what we have just discussed in the slides. So now this is the coding we have just discussed. Let's compile it and run it to make sure we have no errors, and then we can do the run. So let's compile. So it's okay, we have no errors. Now when we do a run, it will ask for values as usual. So 1, 500, and the name is A. To, let's say, all 500. It will give us no output at all. And the reason is, although we have the method below average that is written with our program, actually from the main we didn't call the method. So if we go back to the main, this is the main method. What we did within the main method, only we created the array, and then we ask the user to enter the values, and then this is the end. So always remember, always the output, the reading, always coming from the main. So once you read your array, you have to call the method. So the method is called below average. So I will copy the name. So once we are done with reading, we will call the main below average, and we will send the array name, which is list. Now what is expected as from the main, if we run the program, the array will be created, then it will ask for values, and then it will call the method below average. So once it calls the method below average, it will come to this method. It will calculate the average and display the average for us. So let's compile it and run it again. So let's say the salary 100, the ID is 1, the salary is 400, and the name is A. Let's assume all the salary 400, so the average will be the same as 400. So here it says here the average is 400. Let's try it with other data. So here we tried 400, 500, 600, just like the example we did, and the average as 500. So now we know that the average is doing good, and the value are correctly computed and output. Now the second step is, according to the question, it says here, then you have to output employee ID and name where salary is below the average. So you calculated the average at the beginning and you found that the average is actually 500. Go and find which of these employees is having salary below the average. So let's think about it. So we will have it as follow. So originally this is our array. So we will assume I have 3 employees, ID 1, 2, 3. The salaries are 400, 500, 600, and their names ABC. So if you calculate the sum and the average, in this case, according to this data, the average will be as 500. Now what I need to do, I need to display the ID and name of all employees with salary below the 500. So what I will need a for loop, and again I will go from 0. I should go up to the end of the array, which is last dot length, I plus plus, and then I should have an if condition, and I have to say if the salary of this employee is below the average, is below 500. Now it means that you have to go, if this is I located at location 0, you have to go to the array at location I. So it means I have to say go to the array at location I, which is currently array at location 0, and I have to retrieve the salary. So I have to use the get method. So we will say get salary, which will be 500. So I will have more a comparison like this. I will have location I 0, list of 0, get me the salary, which is 400. Is it less than the average 500? Yes. So in this case, what is needed? I have to do an output. So I will have to say system.out.println. What I need to output for location I need to output the name and the salary. So I will say go to the array at location I and then output the name. It means I have to get the name by saying get name, and let's have a space in between. And then the same thing, I will say list of I dot get ID. So by this case, it means it will do it in the following way. It will say list of 0, get me the name. So this is list of 0, get us the name, which is A. So we will have output as A. List of 0, get us the ID. The ID is 1, so we will have an output as 1. And then we will continue with the loop. I will be incremented, so I will be at location 1. And then again I have to do the comparison. Go to list at location 1 and get salary. Go to the array at location 1, get the salary 500. 500, is it less than the average 500? It's not. So I will not do any output. And then I will go to the next element. I should be at location 2. And again I have to go and retrieve the salary. So I have to say list of 2. Get salary, is it less than the average? So this is location 2. Get me the salary, which is 600. Is it below 500? It's not. So I will not do the output. And then I will go again and I will have to find. And then I will just end my program. And we only output the employee at location 0 because this is the only employee with salary below the average 500. So let's write it to do a compile and run. So we will continue with the same method. So we added here only one statement saying before you do the loop, just have system.out.println employees with salary below average, and then just do the for loop normally. If the salary is below the average, then you have to display the name and the employee ID. So we have no compiling errors. We can do the run. So let's assume we have 400 and the second one is having 500 and the last one as 600. Now it says here average is 500. Employees with salary below average, it's only employee A with ID 1. So we can see now that we have the average calculated correctly. And also when we did a search to find which employee is having salary below average, we managed to find this employee. So let's go and double check our program just to make sure that we know all the concepts. So here the idea from the main, when you create your array, always remember to use the name of the class and then remember brackets because this is an array, and then of course you should have the size. Always you will need to read values from the user, so you will need a for loop. Then create the array, the object, by saying the name of the array, new employee. Then it depends on your parameters and your private members. For example, here I have 3 private members, ID, salary, and name. So I have to create 3 variables. I have to read, and then I have to use set. If I have only ID and salary, then I will read only 2 variables, and then I will use the names. And then, of course, because we need to call a method, I have to call the name of the method, and I have to send the array. Within the method that was requested in this question, it was saying you have an array named list, calculate the average. So of course I have to start with sum equals 0. We will have a for loop from 0 till the end. Always get the salary and add it to the sum. So the idea here, I cannot access salary directly. We cannot just say salary in this way because salary is a private member. So the idea is I have to use a method, and the method here is called getSalary. Then we will calculate the average. And then the second step was to do a search for employees with salary below average. So we needed another for loop. And the same thing, I need getSalary for each employee. So I have to say list of i.getSalary. If it is below average, I will output the name by saying list of I get name, list of I.get employee ID. If it was also asking that you have to count how many of these employees are having below average, so what do you need? You need here to say I have integer count equal 0, and inside the if condition, you will have to say I have to add count plus a plus. And this will do the counting for you. And then once you finish, you'll just have to do a system.out. For example, we will say count equal, and we will just display the value of the counter. If the method needed a return of the count, so it means here this void will be changed to integer. And here, instead of saying system.out, I have to say return count. But we will keep it now as it is. This is void. And this is only as an example of count. If you need, we can just do compile and run for this counting. So here we just have the average, employees below average, and the counter as 1. So this is an example of having a class, which is employee, and then out of this class we wrote another example in which we are calculating the average and we are finding employees below the average.